The electric field inside a spherical shell with uniform charge distribution is zero. This is a very well-known result that we learn in high school and prove in literally 2 lines with Gauss's law in college. But can we do this without Gauss's law?
Let's find out.
So we have a sphere of radius big R and uniform surface charge density sigma. As with most problems in physics, we need to choose a coordinate system in which we are going to solve the problem. Let's choose one with the origin at the center of the sphere. I will assume you're familiar with spherical coordinate system, and if you need more context, there is plenty of literature and videos explaining it, including my previous video on the moment of inertia of a spherical shell, so you can also check that out. So, if we're not going to be using Gauss's law, what are we going to do? Well, we'll use Coulomb's law, of course, or at least something similar to it, because we're not going to do direct integration for the electric field. We're going to do the same thing as in the previous video on the ring of charge. We're going to calculate the electric potential first, and then we're going to take the gradient of the potential to find the field. The formula for the electric potential is 1 over 4 pi epsilon naught times the triple integral over dq over the norm of the difference of vectors r and r prime. Here dq represents an infinitesimal charge at some point on the sphere. R is the vector that spans from the origin to the point where we want to find the value of the field or potential, and r prime is the vector that spans from the origin to some point dq on the sphere. Their difference is the distance between charges dq and the point at which we want to calculate the field or potential. Since the spherical shell is just a curved surface, we don't do triple but double integration. Since the surface charge density at some point is defined as infinitesimal charge dq per infinitesimal surface ds, we can write dq as sigma times ds. And now we shall introduce non-Cartesian coordinates, spherical ones to be exact, r, theta, and phi, where r is the distance from the origin, theta is the angle that some position vector closest with the positive side of the z-axis, is also called the polar angle, and phi is the angle that the projection of some position vector on the xy plane closes with the positive side of the x-axis, and is also called an azimuthal angle. But we'll still be working with Cartesian unit vectors because they're constant as opposed to non-constant vectors of the spherical system. So let's write down vectors r and r prime. R is the vector from the origin to some point of interest. The most generic form is r equals x hat plus y hat plus z hat, where x, y, and z hat are unit vectors in the x, y, and z directions respectively. But since we're working with the sphere, we can exploit some symmetry. You see, it doesn't really matter which vector r you choose, the field and the potential are going to be the same if we look at the same distance from the origin. So we can choose literally any vector we like, and we'll of course choose the easiest one, the vector that lies completely on the z-axis, so r equals z hat. It's really cool that we can do that, but for r prime, however, we really need to choose the most general vector possible. So r prime is going to be equal to x prime x hat plus y prime y hat plus z prime z hat. We can now express the components of this vector in terms of spherical coordinates. X prime is equal to big R times sine theta prime times cosine phi prime. Y prime is big R times sine of theta prime times sine of phi prime. And z prime is big R times cosine theta prime. Usually the radial term is not a constant, but since we are working with a spherical shell, every point on it is at the same distance, big R, from the origin. So that is why I immediately plugged it in. Luckily, we don't need to do this transformation for the r vector because it lies on the z-axis, where theta is 0, so sine theta is 0 and cosine theta is 1, so there's no dependence on these angles, only on the distance from the origin, which we can call anything, so z it is. We can now easily subtract r prime from r to get the following. In the integral, we need the norm of this distance, which is just the square root of the sum of square components. After some math, we get this expression. We can now plug that in for the electric potential. Next, the last step is to write the surface element ds in spherical terms. In this case, ds is equal to big R squared times sine theta prime d theta prime d phi prime. Again, I have already covered this topic with the surface elements and the spherical coordinates in previous videos, so I don't want this video again to be overly long. And now, at last, we need to set limits of integration. Since we're integrating over the entire sphere, the limits for theta prime are from 0 to pi, and limits for phi are from 0 to 2 pi. Now that we have everything that is needed to find the electric potential, let's solve this integral. First, let's put all the constants outside of the integral. Now let's split this double integral into two integrals, one with everything that depends on theta and one with everything dependent on phi. Here we can easily do that because nothing in this expression is dependent on phi, so we can immediately integrate d phi from 0 to 2 pi, which is just 2 pi. Easy. What remains looks intimidating, but we can actually do easy substitution. Let cosine theta prime be x, so dx is minus sine theta prime d theta prime. The limits of integration are now from 1 to negative 1. We get the following expression. To get rid of this minus sign, we'll just switch the limits from negative 1 to 1. And this is essentially a table integral now, since we only have x to the first power in the square root and some constants. Since this integral is pretty easy to solve, and you can actually even plug it into some integral solving software, I will leave it as an exercise for the viewer. We obtain the following result. We can further simplify these terms under the square roots because they correspond to a square of sum in the first term and a square of difference in the second term. Then we cancel the squares and the square roots, but we need to be careful. We need to leave these terms in absolute values. And here is finally the crucial part. If z is less than big R, or in other words, if we're looking inside of a spherical shell, then we can drop the absolute values to get z plus r minus z in parentheses over rz. We then get z plus r minus r plus z over rz. R's cancel out and we're left with 2z over rz. Most importantly, z cancels out. So the electric potential inside a uniformly charged spherical shell is a constant. We get the field by taking the gradient of the potential, but since taking the gradient is just taking derivatives, and the derivative of a constant with respect to anything is 0, we conclude that the electric field inside of a uniformly charged spherical shell is 0. QED.